Let's make a monster. So to make this monster, all we need to do is choose a challenge rating and type a number in the seed box. So we're going to go for a CR5 creature here because I like that range of monster. And for seed, let's go with 12. And what we get is a huge frenzied Fae. Now this creature is CR5. All of its stats have been pulled into the stat block immediately, so they're all right for its CR, they're all balanced for its CR, but you can see there's a whole bunch more information there. This thing has tentacles that erupt from its back, which means it can grapple creatures within 5 feet of itself as a bonus action. It has insectoid wings, which give it a fly speed, and it might be sunlight sensitive, so it might have disadvantage on attack rolls or ability checks when it's in sunlight. In terms of its signature abilities, it gets the abduct trait, so it doesn't cost extra movement for it to grapple and then move with creatures. Great for those tentacles that erupt from its back. As a bonus action, it can cast Fog Cloud or produce a fog cloud to help run away. And then you can see that it is resistant to piercing damage and immune to the blinded condition. So perhaps it has loads of stalks covered in eyes. If you've been running D&D for a while, chances are your players have fought pretty much every monster in the monster manual at least once. So I've built a generator that makes new monsters instantly. And every time you change the CR, you get another monster. So let's do another one. This time, let's go for something a bit more powerful, like a CR 11 and 166 for our seed. That gives us a medium-sized serpentine fiend. Now this creature is resistant to acid damage, it is immune to exhaustion, it has multiple extra tails and bone plating for its mutations, it has an aura of bravery, so it has an emanation that grants immunity to charmed and frightened to creatures within 30 feet of it, and it has weird insight. So one monster it can see within 120 feet, it can learn a secret about the target, which gives this weird, ancient, fiendish creature that lives inside of a tomb. That's the immediate vibe that I get from this creature. In this video, I'll show you how this generator creates balanced monsters instantly, and then I'm going to show you how to get your hands on it for free. Because greetings gamers, my name is Anto, and I'm a professional writer and game designer who wants to help you play more and prep less. So if that sounds like your kind of thing, hit subscribe for more videos just like this. Okay, so let's dive in and take a look at how this thing actually works. So this is all built inside a spreadsheet, so you don't need any special software or anything to be able to run this. You're going to be able to run it in Excel or Google Sheets, and it's all built using lookup tables and formulas to make for a generator that's going to give you a weird monster that has a foundation of balanced numbers. So there are a couple different parts of this. We're going to go through kind of a high level tour of what's in the sheet here, and then I'm going to show you some of the specifics. So at the top here, we have the generator itself. This is formatted like the 4th edition stat block, just because I like the way that that presents information. It breaks it down really nicely. So it's formatted like that. And then down below this black line here, the danger zone, changing anything below this point can ruin and break the generator, so proceed with caution. But this is where all of the information that the generator pulls from is located, and I've left it all visible so that you have the power to change anything that you want. If you don't like how some of the options here work, you've got the option to go in here and change it to suit your needs for your table. So looking at it, it is a little overwhelming the first time you do, but I have put little notes on each table to specify what they do and where the ranges are for them for the most part. But if we go back up to the table, we'll start at the top of the table and I'll explain what each part of this generator does. So right at the top, we have a drop down which changes the CR of the monster. We have everything from CR 0 all the way up to 30. So if we go ahead and change it to CR 3, that is going to change the numbers in the generator to be the same as the median numbers for a CR3 creature. So like in my monster generator, my quick monster builder video where I broke down the math behind the monsters in 5.5, this table here breaks down all of the information for the monsters, what their XP is, what their median abilities are, their initiative, their AC, their hit points, their attack bonus, their damage per round, all of it. And then that gets transplanted into the stat block. So CR3 creature, you can see the AC here, it'll have an AC of 14. It also gives you the range. So if you want to tweak the monster, you can do so really quickly, really easily. As long as its AC sits between 11 and 18, it will be within the bounds of what a CR3 creature is in the 5.5 monster manual. Same with HP, it gives you that information, its initiative information, the save DC information, and then speed is a vibe. So is it slow, fast, or medium? Then we get the ability modifiers. These are pulled from that same table. And then we go down into the attacks area, and that's going to give us your attack bonus, your single target damage, your number of attacks per multi-attack, and your total damage per turn, again, all pulled from that table. Then we start getting into the interesting stuff. So starting at the top here, we have the description of the monster. So we have the size on the left here, huge. We have the creature type on the right, in this case it's a celestial. And then in the middle there we have a conditional cell. So this changes the context of the monster. So in this example, we have a humanoid celestial. So that gives you an immediate picture that this is a celestial creature, but it's taking the form of a humanoid. If we change the seed number, everything in here will change. That gives us a flaming construct. So we know that the creature type is construct. This is going to be, you know, your warforged, your modrones, that sort of thing. But it is flaming. Why is it flaming? How does that look? It gives you a direction to take your monster in. Beneath that, we have the treasure, and this will pull from a couple of different tables. One to give you a treasure type for your monster, the arcana, the armaments, the implements, and the relics. Then we have the rarity of that item. And then next to that, we have the proficiency bonus, again, which is pulled from that master table of monster stats. Then going down, we have resistances. The way this works is we go back down to our big stat block table. And for each CR in the monster manual, I worked out what percentage of the monsters within that CR have a damage resistance. And that is expressed in this table. So for example, a CR11 creature has a 30% chance of having some kind of damage resistance. Then there is a table that calculates, does a roll essentially to determine whether or not this specific generated monster has a damage resistance. It generates a random number, compares that to the percentage chance. If it's greater than, lower than, it will give it a resistance, and then it pulls from a list of resistances, which is here. It pulls from a list of resistances, which is slightly weighted so that you are less likely to get force resistance, for example, than you are to get slashing resistances, and it will give the monster a resistance. Similarly, with magic resistances and legendary resistances, it pulls from the same table using the same percentage chance to roll that number. And again, with immunities and vulnerabilities, it does the same thing. Whether or not you have an immunity, a vulnerability, or a condition, goes through, compares to that master table, rolls randomly to determine whether or not that you do have that immunity, vulnerability, or condition. And if you do, then it will give you which of those immunities or vulnerabilities you have. Now, sometimes it can happen that you get the same immunity and vulnerability. It's rare that it happens, but it can happen. If that does happen, just put a new seed number in to generate out a new block of information other than the stats, and it will give you new information, or just choose one yourself. Then we come to the mutations. Now this is my favorite part of the monster builder, and kind of the whole reason that I started building this, because I wanted a way to quickly make monsters that were weird and esoteric and interesting and had strange things about them that I could put in front of my players. And this whole project kind of grew from that. So this is 3 generators, a body mutation, a limb mutation, and then an other mutation. And the idea is you choose one or more of these options to add an interesting twist to the monster. Now that could be something like the monster has serrated claws, which is a flavor thing. So for example, we have a humanoid celestial, but that has serrated claws. That just gives you a different visual vibe for the monster. But some of them are kind of mechanically tied. So an example of a body mutation is the reflective carapace. If the monster is targeted by magic missile or a spell that requires a ranged attack, there's a chance that that spell just won't do anything to them or be reflected back. Or another mutation is a weakness to music. So if they hear music, they have disadvantage on attack rolls. That is really interesting because that's something that you can seed to the players ahead of time and they can learn about. And then if they've got a bard in the party, or they could use that information to make the fight easier for themselves. And finally, I wanted to make sure that you had the option to run this stat block exactly how it is without having to do any extra work. So I've generated out some traits, some bonus actions, and some reactions for each monster. So the traits are going to be things like Earth Glide. The creature can burrow through the ground. There are a lot of the non-action based options, and they're pulled from a list of traits that the monsters in the monster manual have. Pulled out all of the names, pulled out all of the specific damages and DCs that the monsters have in the monster manual, replaced it with the monster can or with single damage. So as an example, this monster here has the deflect missiles option, and you can see that it can reduce the damage it takes from an attack by single damage plus proficiency bonus. And what this is referencing is this single damage entrance up here. So in this case, our CR3 creature can reduce the damage taken by 12 plus proficiency bonus, so 14 total. If it reduces the damage to 0, it can then redirect some of the attack. One creature it can see within 60 feet has to make a dex save. That save and throw would be using the save DC in its stat block, and then it would take single damage plus proficiency bonus as a result of the monster turning the ranged attack back on its attacker. Sometimes it's going to give you a null result for things like reactions or bonus actions, because not all creatures have them. But the purpose of this monster builder is to very quickly inspire you to get a monster that you wouldn't have come up with otherwise. So let's do a completely random option. Let's get CR14 and go with 395 as our option. And this gives us a gargantuan frenzied plant. Now for the mutations, it gives us multiple heads. So immediately, having just played Resident Evil 9, I'm thinking of Plant 42 and the multiple kind of bulb flowering heads that it has that can kind of spit acid, which is how I would represent its damage. So this kind of huge Plant 42 type creature with multiple heads. We get extra tails as one of the options, which I would represent as kind of extra plant-like limbs. We also get a crown of horns, which I would probably change to be crown of thorns to make it difficult to get close to it, give it difficult terrain going near to it. Then it has a fear aura, so any creature within 20 feet of it that doesn't have the incapacitated condition has to make a wisdom saving throw. In this case, the DC for that would be 17, which is set by our monster builder. And then any enemy that starts its turn in the aura makes that saving throw. If it fails, they have the frightened condition until the start of their next turn. Otherwise, they're immune to the aura for 24 hours. Then we also get trample. Now, the way I would flavor this, again, like Plant 42, would be using its huge plant-like limbs to crush down on that. In terms of resistances, it has no resistances, but it is immune to piercing damage, and then it would get legendary actions. So as you're building out this creature, you know that 112 damage is built through 3 multi-attacks, a bonus trample, and then legendary attacks. So all of its attacks probably want to be smaller damage than you might think. That would signal to me that that single damage of 37 is probably tuned a little bit too high, because we have bonus action damage and legendary action damage, so I'd just bring that down. But if I needed to, on the fly for any reason, give it a new single action damage to do for something, I have that number to fall back on. Let's go again and see what we can get. Let's just generate a new option, a large serpentine fiend. This creature has slimy skin, so its disadvantages on d20 tests made to grapple the creature. It is centaur-like, so bottom half of it would be serpentine, top half would be person-like, and it has extra eyes. Ew, gross. But that does give it advantage on perception checks. And then all of its traits, coincidentally, have ended up being kind of hiding based. So it's got living shadow, so while it's in dim light or darkness, it has resistance to damage that isn't force, psychic, or radiant, and it's got vanish, so it can give itself the invisible condition. So I'm picturing this creature that is like an ambush predator, something that lurks in the shadows to pounce on its foe. And I think that this would be a really memorable encounter for a group of low-level parties that delve into a dungeon, and this kind of demonic serpent centaur with many eyes that kind of becomes visible out of the darkness to attack them would be very terrifying. So there we have it, a generator capable of giving you an infinite variety of interesting monsters that you can use right away, but that won't break your game. If you want to get your hands on this for yourself, you can get it for free by signing up for my email newsletter. As soon as you sign up using the link down in the description, you'll get my GM toolkit, which is packed with tools and generators, including this monster generator. Then every month you'll get new 5.5 content like monsters and adventures sent straight to your inbox. If you want to keep watching, check out this video where I break down the math behind the monsters in 5.5 so you can make homebrew monsters that are more balanced without having to rely on a generator. But until next time, happy gaming.